I can teach anybody how to ride a bicycle in 5 minutes. All you need is somebody who's willing to listen and to pay attention and to go against what seems to be right in their minds, what, counterintuitive. All you have to do to learn how to ride a bicycle is turn the way you're falling. It's balance, dynamic balance. And the Wright brothers knew about bicycles. They were bicycle fanatics. They even opened a bicycle shop. They even built bicycles and sold them. And they loved to ride. They loved the feeling of flying through the air. And they thought, now if we just get off the ground. They were always interested in mechanical flight. They read everything they get their hands on. And one day they read in a newspaper about Otto Lilienthal over in Germany. He'd had a wreck and died from the crash. And the reporter said the glider worked perfectly until it failed. Well, as engineers, they knew better. It had failed in its conception and its design. Something was wrong. And they started to try to figure out why it failed and what could be done to fly. First flight was just kites. They built these gliders and they kept them on lines, and they tested out a new principle for dynamic control. You see, Lilienthal and most of the glider people thought that you used shifting your body weight to control flight. When you think about it, wouldn't it be weird to be in a jet and have the captain come on and says, okay, we're going to tilt to the right, so I need everybody to the right side of the plane. Wouldn't work. They had to have some way of changing the dynamics of the wings so that one wing would rise, the other wing would fall, so they could, like on a bike, you don't turn by turning the wheel. You turn by leaning, and then the wheel goes with it. One day, I think it was Wilbur was there in his shop talking to somebody, and he had an inner tube box in his hand, and he was just playing with it, fiddling with this empty, long, narrow box. And he noticed what he was doing. He was warping that box. He said, if I get the wings to do something like that, one side would have more lift than the other, and we would tilt the plane and we could turn. They designed wing warping. Dynamic balance. John knows a thing or two about dynamic balance. People are asking him, what do we do? Well, you have to change your life. If you're turning this way, you need to somehow reshape it and move this way, but you can't just turn the wheel. You have to turn the whole life, roll the whole life. The next year, 1901, the Wrights went out, and this time they built bigger gliders. These should have been stronger and had more lift because they made them with big wings, but they didn't work. What they found out was that Lilienthal and all the others had been using the wrong numbers, the wrong coefficients, the wrong engineering, the wrong shape of wing. They needed to find an answer. And they knew they couldn't do it by building gliders and going out to Kitty Hawk. It would take a lot of money and it would take a lot of time, and there were other people better funded than them who were working on the same problem, and they wouldn't come in first at discovering flight. So they built the first time, this is a true invention, they built a wind tunnel. Nobody had ever thought of this before. They built a wind tunnel, had a fan in one end, blew the air by, and they built a little contraption they called a balance. And they could put little shapes of wings, carefully crafted, on this balance made out of hacksaw blades. You put this little wing on there, and with various controls, they could measure how much lift a particular wing section would have. But they tested hundreds of wing samples, and they found the exact shape that's being used today, because it's the most powerful lifting device. They built a glider with this new wing, took it out to Kitty Hawk in 1902, got it up in the air with them riding, and it worked perfectly as far as lift, but when they started to turn, it would suddenly start spiraling down into the ground. They called it the well digger. Something was wrong. What could be going wrong? They thought about it, and they came up with what is truly a brilliant, counterintuitive understanding. When you look at an airplane, you know that big vertical wing, big vertical fin in the back, the rudder. It's not like a rudder on a ship. The rudder on a ship, you turn it left and the ship goes right. This rudder on an airplane does not turn the airplane. What turns the airplane is to tilt. But if you tilt and don't control the back rudder, then you will spiral into the ground. You have to turn the rudder, and you have to turn it the wrong way. It's part of this three-dimensional dynamic balance that the Wright brothers seem to understand more than anybody else. That's the way it is with us. We are called to follow God, and yet we get out of whack. What can we do? These people ask John, what can we do to be ready for the coming of the Lord? Well, if you've got plenty, and you know someone who's got not so plenty, share. Isn't that obvious? And yet we get so tied up in our things that we sometimes forget, I often forget. Well, I think it's the things that make me happy. And when I found out, it's giving away stuff to those who need it. It's giving away love that fills my heart with love. We as humans confuse power and love. And once we turn to power, then we have the power to do what we please. And then we turn around and hurt others. It's just the golden rule. Don't do to others. Don't do to anyone anything you wouldn't like happening to you. It's that simple. And yet it creates a life of dynamic balance, because while we have to take care of ourselves, we have to eat, we have to get what we can get to live on, and yet we balance it by giving, and giving to those in need, the least of these. In 1903, the pressure was on. Samuel Langley up in Washington, D.C. had already tried to fly his aerodrome. It crashed, but he was going to fly it again on December 8th. And if the Wright brothers were going to get off the ground and get credit for it, they had to do it before then, in case it flew. But one thing led to another. There was wind, there wasn't enough wind, there was rain, there was sea storms coming in, and the 8th came and went. They got a telegram from home that Langley's flight had crashed into the Potomac River. He had not succeeded in discovering flight. And on the 17th, they got out their little runway, which was the 2x4s laid in a line, and they set the glider up, the airplane up. They fired up the engine and went down the track, and it hopped up off the track and back down just a few seconds. Second one went about 100 feet. Third flight, they got it up, bounced a little bit, didn't hit the ground, but just bouncing, then actually soared a little bit. 852 feet. They had gone farther than 500 feet, kind of a minimum, you'd say. It had left the ground by its own power, and they were in full control. They discovered flight. People didn't believe it. There were people in other places doing the same sort of thing. In Europe, there was quite a aeronautical society going on, and a lot of them thought that the Wright brothers were just blowing smoke. In an article in 1906 in the Paris edition of the New York Herald, it says, "Flyers or liars? Anyone can say they fly. Either you've flown or you haven't flown. Either you have a machine or you don't have a machine. It's easy to talk. It's a lot harder to do." The Wright brothers took those 3 or 4 years, to learn how to fly, to improve their flyer, and to spend time flying around a field called Hoffman's Prairie in the Dayton area to learn how to do it. And so finally Wilbur went over to France, and he flew in this air show. Now he didn't stay up very long, almost a couple of minutes, but he made a left turn and a right turn, and he circled. And in later flights, he was flying figure eights, and the people were amazed at the control. This was not about getting off the ground. It was about having control. And the Wright brothers knew where the control was. It was in dynamic balance. John knows it's about a dynamic balance of our lives. Now, John makes it pretty scary. Either you are living Christ or you're not. Either you possess the Holy Spirit in everything you do, or you do not. We'd like to pretend that we can just be good enough to fool people most of the time. But what John is calling for, and what Christ is calling for, is that we live this joyously every single day in everything we do. We live in that balance, and God will be in control.